Before we start the film, don't forget to click the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our new content. The story begins with a man named Stephen, a high-ranking official in Parliament who was very successful in his job. He was used to spending his time between home and work, and despite his many responsibilities, he always made sure not to neglect his family. One day, after a long and tiring day at work, Stephen returned home. His wife, Ingrid, told him that their son Martin now had a new girlfriend named Annie, and that Martin had told her he planned to move in with her. Ingrid also told him she had invited them both for dinner that evening so they could meet her, and he agreed. They were expected to arrive soon. Indeed, Martin and Annie came over for dinner as planned, so she could meet his father, mother, and sister Sarah. From the moment Annie walked in, Stephen's eyes fell on her, and he was immediately attracted to her, and she was attracted to him too. The evening went on normally, but unfortunately, without any warning, a relationship began to develop between Stephen, Martin's father, and his son's girlfriend, Annie. One day, the whole family gathered for a fancy dinner at a luxurious restaurant to celebrate Martin's new job. During the dinner, everyone noticed that Ingrid wasn't happy about Annie's presence. She began interrogating her to the point that Martin noticed how uncomfortable his mother was. Everyone observed the situation. Stephen, however, couldn't intervene so as not to raise suspicions, while Annie responded to Ingrid with a smile and extreme calmness. Then Ingrid asked Annie to tell her a little about her life. Annie agreed and began talking, explaining that she had a very difficult life and had been living away from her family for years. She said she was now working and trying to succeed in her career. She added that she currently lived independently and loved to travel, and that her mother was of French origin and lived in another country. Annie mentioned that she had recently been living with her mother, but her mother had moved to another country after marrying her fourth husband. Naturally, all of this didn't seem normal to Ingrid. At the end of the evening, Ingrid told Stephen that she didn't feel comfortable with Annie or her story, and that she didn't think she was the right person for their son Martin. But Stephen told her Annie seemed like a nice and beautiful girl. That same night, after Martin dropped Annie off at her place and went to his office because he had a lot of work, his father Stephen went and spent the night with his son's girlfriend. The next day, Stephen learned from Ingrid that Martin and Annie were traveling to Paris for the weekend, which made Ingrid very upset. She felt that Annie was taking control of Martin. Stephen, of course, was deeply bothered when he heard the news and couldn't stay away from Annie. Suddenly, and without warning, he decided to go to Paris. When he arrived, he called Annie at the hotel they were staying in. He had found out the name of the hotel from his wife, Ingrid. When he spoke to her, he told her that he had just arrived in Paris and was staying at the same hotel, and asked her to come down immediately. They met as planned. Annie left the room while Martin was still asleep and went to meet Stephen, his father. Stephen had booked a room in the same hotel and started watching his son from afar. He was so jealous that he ended up crying like a child. The next day, he returned home to London and told his wife it had been a business trip. He was surprised to find a strange boy in their home, so he asked Ingrid who the boy was and how long he had been there. Ingrid told him that the boy had stayed over the previous night because their daughter Sarah liked him. But Stephen didn't care, his mind was entirely preoccupied with Annie. Later, Stephen called Annie to meet the next day. When they met, he asked her to live with him, but Annie refused and told him that by doing this, he would lose his home, his son, and everything. But Stephen was in love with Annie and said, "I'm willing to lose everything, except you." She replied, "I can't be the reason you lose everything. I'm not leaving you." He told her he missed her and had to see her as soon as possible, so they set a date. That night, when he returned home, he found Ingrid waiting for him with love and romance. She started getting close to him and told him she still loved him. It seemed like she could feel something was off with him. But he didn't care about Ingrid or her feelings. He left her and walked away. He was heading to Annie's place as agreed. But to his surprise, his son Martin wasn't there. He found her with her old friend Peter. Peter subtly hinted to Stephen that Annie loved her freedom, and that's why their relationship didn't work out, and they remained friends. After that, Stephen left Annie's place and waited outside until Peter left. Once he made sure Peter had gone, he went back inside to ask her about him. This time, he was very angry and asked her about her relationship with Peter. She told him the story of their relationship, their memories together, and how Peter had supported her when her older brother committed suicide when they were kids. Stephen was moved by what she said, and forgave her. The next day, we see them all in the car on their way to Ingrid's father's house to celebrate her birthday. Naturally, Ingrid was very upset when she found out that Martin had brought Annie with him to her father's house to celebrate the occasion. They had decided to stay there for 2 days. Stephen, on the other hand, was very happy that Annie was with them. While there, Martin surprised everyone by proposing to Annie, and she accepted. Everyone was shocked, and Stephen looked at Annie, clearly tense upon hearing the news. Ingrid became even more upset, since she already disapproved of Annie. Annie, as always, remained completely calm. That night, Stephen met Annie in her room, but as he left, his daughter Sarah saw him. She was shocked by what she witnessed but said nothing. 2 days later, they returned from the trip. Stephen was very distressed and began behaving irritably at work. When he got home, he decided to talk to Sarah and tried to explain why he had come out of Annie's room late at night during the family visit. He told her he was talking to Annie, trying to convince her to get closer to the family, and that he asked her to improve her relationship with Ingrid. But Sarah just looked at him as he spoke, showing no sign that she believed him. Then she got up and said she wanted to go to sleep. A few days later, Annie's mother invited the family to lunch to get to know them and to discuss wedding arrangements. But Annie's mother embarrassed her in front of everyone by saying, "Martin is a handsome and lovely boy, but he's not the type Annie is used to." Ingrid, Martin's mother, was surprised by that and asked, "Do you mean that Annie has had relationships before?" Annie's mother replied, "I mean her friends, most of them were complicated types." Martin tried to ease the awkward situation and said, "I know all of Annie's friends. I know she has a close friend named Peter from childhood," implying that he was indeed a bit complicated. Then he laughed. Annie's mother continued talking and started telling stories about her 4 marriages, saying, "I get bored of men quickly, that's why my marriages never last long." She then spoke about her son who committed suicide as a child, saying, "Martin looks so much like him." Annie was very upset and shouted at her mother, "You know how much this topic upsets me." She asked her to stop talking, and her mother apologized. Everyone continued eating in silence. Later, Stephen drove Annie's mother to the hotel. In the car, she told him, "I'm very happy that Martin is marrying Annie. I consider Martin a good man for my daughter. I hope nothing stands in their way." Then suddenly, she added, "I was watching the way you looked at my daughter the whole time, and I figured everything out. I feel there's something strange going on between you two." She asked him to stay away from Annie and let her marry his son Martin. Stephen was very nervous and terrified of being exposed. He called Annie and told her, "We can't meet again. This relationship is wrong, and we must stop ourselves from continuing it." Then he went to his son's workplace and tried to repair their relationship, telling him, "I wish you a happy life with Annie. These feelings are beautiful, and you should hold on to them." Days passed, and Stephen seemed troubled and sad. After a long internal struggle, he couldn't resist. He called Martin's house to speak with Annie, but Martin answered the phone, so he quickly hung up. Annie, standing nearby, realized it had been Stephen and sent him a message with an address, an apartment, and a key. Stephen rushed to the place to meet her. When he saw her, he was overjoyed. Unfortunately, he forgot the key in the door. Suddenly, we see Martin heading to the same address. We learn that this was Annie's old apartment. The building manager had called Annie to check the water motor maintenance, but Martin had answered and decided to go himself. When he arrived, he found the key in the door and opened it. As soon as he stepped inside, he saw his fiancée Annie with his father. He was shocked, stepped backward, lost balance, and fell over the stair railing, and sadly, he died instantly. Stephen rushed down to check on him, but it was too late. Annie quietly grabbed her clothes, left the apartment without any emotion, and walked away, uncaring about what had just happened. Stephen held his son's lifeless body, sobbing uncontrollably. During the investigation, he confessed to the affair with his son's fiancée, which became a scandal, on top of losing the most precious person in his life, his son Martin. Afterward, he returned home to find Ingrid in complete devastation after hearing the news. She screamed at him, "You're the reason my son is dead. You destroyed this family and caused the death of our only child." She asked him to end his own life. Stephen couldn't even respond. He went to work and submitted his resignation. Then he decided to visit Annie's mother at the hotel to ask about her. She told him, "She stayed here last night and left this morning." She added, "I warned you about this, but you didn't listen." Stephen asked if Annie had left her a message. She replied, "Of course, she went back to Peter, as always." But Stephen felt she was still in the building, so he went to the room, opened the door, and found her there. She looked at him in silence. He looked back at her in silence too. Then Stephen left her behind and decided to isolate himself from everyone. He realized that not all feelings are meant to be pursued, no matter how beautiful they seem. He spent the rest of his life alone in a small house. In the final scene, we see him hanging a very large photo of himself and his son Martin on the wall, with a photo of Annie placed in the middle. And that's how the film ends. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to click the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our upcoming videos.